Chapter 1. The blood auction. Rain came down like judgment. Alara pressed herself against the stone wall of the alleyway, her breath misting in the cold November air. Her fingers trembled as she clutched the leather satchel to her chest, everything she owned in the world reduced to a bag she could carry in one hand. Behind her, 3 blocks away, the apartment she'd shared with Marcus still held her furniture, her books, her life. But none of it belonged to her anymore. He'd made sure of that. The betrayal was 2 weeks old, but it sat in her throat like broken glass. Marcus, her fiancé of 4 years, had emptied their joint accounts, transferred the lease into his mistress's name, and disappeared to Costa Rica with enough money to start over. Alara had been left with $17, a maxed-out credit card, and the kind of public humiliation that made former friends cross the street to avoid her. She'd come to the city's old quarter tonight because she'd heard whispers, desperate whispers, passed between women with nothing left to lose. There was work here, they said. Dangerous work. The kind that paid in cash and didn't ask questions. The kind that dealt with vampires. Alara had laughed the first time she'd heard it. Vampires weren't real. But then she'd seen the flyers printed on expensive cardstock, left in places where only the desperate would find them. Donors needed. Discretion guaranteed. Compensation? Generous. She'd told herself she'd just look. Just see if it was real. Now she stood outside an iron gate set into a wall older than the Republic itself, watching as other women and a few men filed through in silence. They all had the same look, hollow-eyed, worn thin by life, willing to trade something irreplaceable for the chance to survive another month. Alara joined the line. The gate led to a courtyard drowning in shadows. Gas lamps flickered despite the rain, their light struggling against the dark. The building beyond was Gothic revival, all pointed arches and gargoyles. The kind of architecture that belonged in a European cathedral. Not tucked away in the industrial heart of an American city, a woman in a black velvet dress waited at the entrance. She was beautiful in an unsettling way, too pale to still, her eyes the color of smoke. Name, she said, her voice carrying no warmth. Alara Thorne. The woman consulted a leather-bound ledger. Ah, the school teacher. Recently unemployed. She smiled, and her teeth were very white. How unfortunate. But you're here now, and that's what matters. She gestured toward the doors. Inside, 2nd floor. Remove your coat and jewelry. Someone will come for you. Alara's heart hammered. What exactly? You'll donate blood. In exchange, you'll receive $5,000 cash. The woman's smile sharpened. Unless you'd prefer to leave? $5,000. Enough to rent a room, buy food, start over. Alara walked inside. The interior was even more overwhelming than the exterior. The entrance hall soared 3 stories high, its ceiling lost in shadows. Chandeliers dripped with crystals, and the walls were paneled in dark wood carved with symbols Alara didn't recognize. Everything smelled of beeswax and old roses. Other donors were being led up a grand staircase by silent attendants. Alara followed, her wet shoes squeaking on marble floors that reflected the candlelight like black mirrors. The 2nd floor opened into a gallery lined with portraits, men and women in period dress, their eyes following her with unnerving intensity. Donors sat or reclined on them, while figures in dark suits knelt beside them, wrists pressed to pale mouths. The feeding was silent, almost reverent, and horrifyingly intimate. Alara's stomach turned. First time? She spun. A man stood behind her, tall, lean, dressed in a charcoal suit that probably cost more than her former car. His hair was dark, swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble. But it was his eyes that stopped her breath. They were silver, actual silver, and they saw straight through her. Ah yes, she managed. It shows. He didn't smile, but something flickered in those impossible eyes. You're afraid. Good. Fear keeps you careful. He gestured toward an empty couch near the back. That one's mine. Alara's mouth went dry. I can choose? No, the word was soft, but absolute. I chose you the moment you walked through the gate. Your fear smells like lightning before a storm. He tilted his head. I'm Caspian Nightshade. You'll sit. You'll offer your wrist. You'll leave with your payment and your life. Simple. Nothing about this felt simple. But Alara thought of the eviction notice, of sleeping in her car, of the empty refrigerator and emptier bank account. She thought of Marcus's face when he'd told her she'd always been too naive, too trusting, too boring to keep. She lifted her chin. Fine. Caspian Nightshade's expression shifted surprise, perhaps, or something close to respect. He extended a hand toward the couch. Alara sat. He knelt before her with a grace that seemed inhuman, and she realized with a jolt that it was. Everything about him was wrong in small ways. The absolute stillness when he wasn't moving, the way his chest didn't rise and fall, the sense that he was older than the building around them. Your wrist, he said. She extended her arm. Her hand shook. Caspian caught her wrist in cool fingers, turning it to expose the pale underside. His thumb traced her pulse point, and his eyes closed briefly. Strong heartbeat. You're healthier than you look. I can't afford to be sick. His eyes opened. No, suppose you can't. Something like regret crossed his face. This will hurt, but only for a moment. Alara braced herself, but before Caspian could lower his mouth to her wrist, the double doors exploded inward. Screams erupted. Alara jerked back, but Caspian's grip tightened, holding her in place. 3 figures stormed into the ballroom. Vampires, she knew instantly, but different from the ones feeding. These 3 moved like predators, violence radiating from them like heat. The one in front was a woman in red leather, her smile full of fangs. Well, she purred. A nightshade blood auction. How quaint. Caspian rose in one fluid motion, placing himself between Alara and the intruders. This is neutral ground, Morgana. You violate the accords by being here. Morgana laughed. The accords died with the old council. House Thorn has new rules now. Her eyes found Alara, still frozen on the couch. And new appetites. Everything happened at once. Morgana moved a blur of red and rage. Caspian met her, and the impact shook the floor. Other vampires scattered, dragging their donors toward the exits. Alara tried to run, but one of Morgana's companions blocked her path, grinning. Then Alara did something she couldn't explain. She ran toward the fight. Caspian and Morgana were locked together, his hands around her throat, her claws raking his chest. Blood black in the candlelight poured from wounds that should have been fatal. Alara didn't think. She grabbed a crystal vase from a nearby table and brought it down on Morgana's skull with everything she had. The vampire shrieked and released Caspian, whirling toward Alara with murder in her eyes, but Caspian was faster. He caught Morgana by the hair and threw her across the ballroom. She crashed through a portrait and didn't get up. Her companions hesitated, then grabbed her and fled. Silence fell like ash. Caspian turned to Alara. Blood soaked his shirt. His face was deathly pale, and those silver eyes burned with something between fury and wonder. You, he said, his voice rough, just saved a vampire's life. Alara's legs gave out. Caspian caught her before she hit the floor, lifting her as if she weighed nothing. Foolish, reckless human. But his tone held no anger. What's your name? Alara Thorn. His eyes widened fractionally. Then, impossibly, he smiled. Thorn. Of course. He looked toward the shattered doors, then back at her. I'm afraid, Miss Thorn, that you've just made yourself a target of the most dangerous vampire house in the Eastern Territories. What? Which means, Caspian continued, already carrying her toward a hidden door behind the days. You're coming with me. Chapter 2. Sanctuary in Shadows. The hidden door led to a passage that smelled of earth and old stone. Caspian moved through the darkness with perfect confidence, still carrying Alara as if she were made of air. She could hear shouts behind them, more vampires arriving, chaos spreading through the auction house. Put me down, she said. I can walk. No, his voice was strained. You can't move fast enough, and I'm bleeding too heavily to trust my control. If I let you go. Alara's stomach dropped. Control? I'm wounded. Fresh human blood. As he stopped walking, his jaw clenched. Distracting. They emerged into a basement garage where a black car waited, sleek and expensive. Caspian deposited her in the passenger seat with surprising gentleness, then moved to the driver's side. His shirt was soaked through now, the blood still flowing. You need a hospital, Alara said. I need blood and rest, both of which I'll have soon enough. He started the engine. Morgana's people will search the obvious places: hotels, safe houses my family owns. So we're going somewhere she'd never think to look. Where? My home. The car slid into the rain-slicked streets. Alara watched the city blur past, her mind struggling to catch up with the last 10 minutes. She'd gone to a blood auction. She'd hit a vampire with a vase. And now she was in a car with another vampire who claimed she'd made herself a target. Why did she attack? Alara asked. You said it was neutral ground. Caspian's hands tightened on the wheel. House Thorn has been trying to destabilize the peace accords for months. Tonight was a provocation attack, a nightshade gathering. Prove we're too weak to retaliate. His silver eyes flicked toward her. What you did changed the narrative. I hit her with a vase. You defended me in front of witnesses. A human showing loyalty to House Nightshade. He smiled, though it looked pained. Morgana can't spin that as weakness. Which means she'll want you dead before you can testify to what happened. Alar's hands began to shake. I just needed money. I didn't want any of this. I know. His voice softened. But you walked through that gate, and now you're part of something larger than both of us. He turned onto a tree-lined street where old mansions sat behind iron fences. I can protect you, but you'll have to trust me. I don't know you, no, but you saved my life anyway. He pulled into a circular driveway before a 3-story Victorian house, all dark wood and leaded windows. That suggests your instincts are better than your judgment, despite everything. Elara almost laughed. Inside, the house was beautiful in an austere way, hardwood floors, Persian rugs, furniture that looked antique but well-maintained. No cobwebs or Gothic drama. Just the home of someone very old and very careful. Caspian locked the door behind them and immediately pulled off his ruined shirt. Elara looked away, but not before she saw the wounds across his chest, deep gouges that were slowly, impossibly, knitting themselves closed. Vampires heal, he said, following her gaze. But it takes blood and energy. I need to feed properly, which means I need you to stay in the front room while I go to my storage. Storage? Medical blood. Donated, purchased, ethically sourced. He moved toward the stairs, then paused. I don't feed from the unwilling, Miss Thorne. Whatever else you think of me, know that. He disappeared upstairs. Elara stood alone in the entrance hall, her wet coat dripping onto antique floors, and tried to process the night. She should run, call the police, find somewhere safe. But where was safe? If Caspian was telling the truth and the evidence of vampire existence was hard to deny, then she'd witnessed something House Thorne wanted buried. And Marcus had made sure she had nowhere to go, no one to call. She moved into the front room. It was a library, floor-to-ceiling shelves packed with books in multiple languages. A fire burned in the hearth lit recently, the wood still crackling. Elara moved closer to it, letting the heat seep into her bones. On the mantel sat a photograph in a silver frame. A woman with dark hair and kind eyes, wearing a dress from the 1940s. She looked happy. My sister. Elara spun. Caspian stood in the doorway, changed into a fresh shirt, his color better. The wounds on his chest had closed completely. Was? Elara asked softly. She died in 1952. Cancer. He moved to stand beside her, looking at the photograph. I was turned in 1847. I thought immortality meant I could protect everyone I loved. I learned otherwise. The grief in his voice was raw, immediate, not dulled by a century of time. I'm sorry, Elara said. Caspian glanced at her. Why did you help me tonight? You could have run when Morgana attacked. Elara looked at the fire. I don't know. You were hurt. And she was. She struggled for words. It wasn't right. The way she came at you. You weren't doing anything wrong. I was preparing to drink your blood, with my consent. For money I needed. Elara met his eyes. There's a difference between that and what she wanted to do. Something shifted in Caspian's expression. Surprise, maybe. Or recognition. You understand consent, he said quietly. That's rare. Even among my kind, the concept is flexible. Then your kind has a problem. He laughed, short and sharp. Indeed we do. He gestured toward a leather sofa. Sit. You must have questions. Elara sat, and Caspian took the chair across from her, moving with that unsettling grace. Now that the immediate danger had passed, she could look at him properly. He was handsome in an old-fashioned way, sharp features, careful posture, the bearing of someone raised in a different century. But his eyes were what held her, ancient and silver, and entirely to knowing. What happens now? She asked. Now I contact my house. Inform them of Morgana's attack. Request formal protection for you as a witness. He steepled his fingers. You'll stay here until it's safe. That could be days, possibly weeks. I can't stay here for weeks. You can't leave. House Thorne has resources, vampires, human servants, connections in law enforcement. If you go back to your life, they'll find you in hours. Elara's chest tightened. So I'm a prisoner. You're a guest under my protection. Caspian leaned forward. I won't lie to you, Miss Thorne. This is dangerous. But you saved my life, and I pay my debts. I will keep you safe. Why should I believe you? Because, he said simply, I've had nearly 2 centuries to perfect the art of lying. If I wanted to deceive you, you'd never know. It was such an arrogant, honest answer that Alara found herself believing him. Okay, she said. I'll stay. For now. Caspian nodded. Then let me show you to your room. You need rest. Tomorrow we'll discuss what comes next. He led her upstairs to a bedroom that looked like it belonged in a historic four-poster bed, thick quilts, windows overlooking a garden gone wild. It was beautiful and strange and utterly surreal. At the door, Caspian paused. Thank you, he said. For tonight. You didn't have to intervene. Neither did you, Alara countered. You could have let Morgana take me. His smile was slight but genuine. No, Miss Thorne, I couldn't. He closed the door softly behind him. Alara stood alone in the borrowed room and wondered what exactly she'd gotten herself into. Chapter 3. Uncommon Horse. Alara didn't sleep. She lay in the unfamiliar bed, watching moonlight crawl across the ceiling, listening to the old house settle around her. Every creak sent her heart racing. Every whisper of wind against the windows made her wonder if someone was trying to get in. Atm. She gave up. The house was silent as she descended the stairs, her borrowed slippers soundless on the hardwood. Caspian had left her clothes to dry and provided a robe that smelled faintly of lavender. She wrapped it tighter and made her way toward the library, drawn by the memory of warmth and books. The fire still burned, though lower now. And Caspian sat in the same chair he'd occupied earlier, reading by lamplight. He looked up as she entered, unsurprised. Can't sleep? How did you know I was there? Heartbeat, breathing, the sound of your footsteps 3 rooms away. He marked his place in the book, something in Latin. Vampire hearing is inconveniently acute. Alara moved to the sofa, curling into the corner. Don't you sleep? Not at night. Sunlight makes us lethargic, vulnerable. Darkness is when we're strongest. He studied her with those unsettling silver eyes. You're afraid. Of course I'm afraid. I'm in a vampire's house while other vampires want me dead. Fair. He set the book aside. What would help? The question surprised her. What? You're my guest and my responsibility. If there's something I can do to make you feel safer, tell me. Alara considered. Answers. Real ones. What exactly is House Thorne? Why do they want war? Caspian was quiet for a moment, firelight playing across his pale features. Then he stood and moved to a cabinet, retrieving a crystal decanter and 2 glasses. He poured amber liquid into both and offered her one. Whiskey, he said. 70 years old. I can't get drunk anymore, but I remember enjoying it. Alara accepted the glass. The whiskey burned perfectly going down. Caspian returned to his chair. Vampire society is organized into houses, bloodlines with territory, resources, and political power. My family, House Nightshade, has held the Eastern Territories for 3 centuries. We believe in the Accords, coexistence with humans, ethical feeding, laws that protect both species, and House Thorne. House Thorne is old, older than mine. They believe vampires are apex predators, that humans are prey, and that our current peace is an insult to our nature. His jaw tightened. They've been building alliances, challenging the Accords, pushing for a return to the old ways, which were hunt humans, feed without consent, rule through fear. He met her eyes. The world you'd get if they win isn't one where blood auctions exist. It's one where humans disappear, and no one asks questions. Alara's hand tightened on her glass. How many vampires believe that? More than I'd like. Immortality breeds arrogance. Many of my kind have forgotten what it's like to be vulnerable. He paused. You reminded me tonight. By hitting someone with a vase? By choosing to act when you could have fled? By seeing me as someone worth saving instead of something to fear? His voice dropped. Most humans don't do that. Even the ones who work with us see us as monsters. They tolerate. You saw me as a person under attack? The intensity in his gaze made Alara look away. I don't think you're a monster. You should. It would be safer. You keep saying that. But you've done nothing to hurt me. Yet, the word hung between them. I'm old, Miss Thorne. Nearly 200 years. I've done things in that time that would horrify you. The man I was in 1847 would be unrecognizable to you now. People change. Why not vampires? Caspian smiled, but it was sad. Because we have forever to become what we truly are. And what I am is a predator who's learned to wear civilization like a suit. He finished his whiskey. Don't romanticize me. I'm dangerous, even when I'm kind. Alara should have been frightened. Instead, she felt something else, curiosity, maybe, or recognition. She knew what it was like to be seen as less than you were, reduced to a single story others told about you. Why do you live alone? She asked. If you're part of a house, where's your family? Dead, turned, or estranged? I have cousins in the house, but we're not close. I prefer solitude. He glanced around the library. These books don't expect anything from me. They don't want me to be a warrior or a leader or a symbol. I can just exist here. That sounds lonely. It is. He said it simply, without self-pity. But loneliness is safer than connection. Everyone I've loved has either died or left. Immortality doesn't change that pattern. It just extends it. Alara thought of Marcus, of the friends who'd vanished when she'd needed them most. Mortality doesn't protect you from that either. Caspian's eyes found hers. And something passed between them, an understanding that needed no words. The moment stretched. Fragile and strange, then a sound broke it, glass shattering somewhere in the house. Caspian was on his feet instantly, moving between Alara and the doorway. Stay here. Don't leave this room. What is it? Someone's testing my defenses. His voice had gone cold, lethal. I need to see who. He vanished before she could respond. Moving with inhuman speed, Alara stood frozen in the library, her heart hammering. She heard footsteps overhead, fast, deliberate. Then voices, low and tense. She couldn't make out words, but the tone was clear. Confrontation. She should stay put. Caspian had told her to stay, but Alara thought of him facing unknown threats, alone, possibly outnumbered, and her feet moved before her mind caught up. She crept into the hallway. The voices came from upstairs, from what sounded like Caspian's bedroom. She climbed quietly, following the sound. The door was ajar. Through it, she could see Caspian facing two vampires, both male, both dressed in dark suits that screamed wealth and power. Violation of protocol, one was saying. You can't harbor a human witness without house approval. I can do whatever I want in my own territory, Caspian replied. And she's under my protection. That makes her untouchable. The council will see it differently. Then the council can come speak to me directly instead of sending lackeys. The other vampire smiled. It wasn't friendly. Careful, Caspian. Your sister's reputation only shields you so far. Caspian moved so fast, Alara barely saw it. One moment he was standing still. The next, he had the vampire by the throat, lifted off the ground. Never, Caspian said softly, speak of my sister. The vampire clawed at Caspian's hand, gasping. His companion reached for a weapon. Alara stepped into the room. All three vampires turned to stare at her. Miss Thorne, Caspian said, his voice strained. I told you to stay downstairs. I heard fighting. I wanted to make sure you were okay. She looked at the two intruders. Are they here to kill me? The vampire, Caspian wasn't choking, laughed. No, human. We're here to ensure you understand the situation you've created. Then talk to me, Alara said. Not him. I'm the one who witnessed the attack. Caspian released the other vampire, who stumbled back, coughing. This is not a negotiation. It is now, Alara countered. She had no idea where this courage was coming from, probably terror masquerading as bravery. You want my testimony? My cooperation? Then treat me like a person, not a problem. The two vampires exchanged glances. Interesting, one murmured. Very interesting. He looked at Caspian. Perhaps there's more to this human than we thought. There is, Caspian said quietly. Which is why she stays with me. The vampires left moments later, escorted out by Caspian with cold formality. When he returned, he looked at Alara with something between exasperation and admiration. You, he said, are either very brave or very foolish. Probably both. Alara's hands were shaking now that the adrenaline was fading. Who were they? House Nightshade elders. Checking to see if you're worth protecting. He moved closer, studying her face. You impressed them. That's rare. I just said what I thought, exactly. Caspian smiled slightly. Most humans cower. You negotiate. It's unexpected. Alara met his eyes. I'm tired of cowering. Something shifted in his expression, warming the silver of his gaze. Good, he said softly, because what comes next will require courage. Chapter 4. Lessons in Darkness. Morning came with gray light filtering through the curtains. Alara woke disoriented, the events of the previous night, feeling like a fever dream. But the unfamiliar room and the distant sound of rain confirmed everything was real. She found Caspian in the kitchen, which surprised her. Somehow she'd imagined vampires avoiding such mundane spaces. But he stood at the counter, pouring coffee from a French press with the ease of long practice. I thought you couldn't eat or drink, Elara said from the doorway. I can't, but I still remember how. And guests appreciate the gesture. He poured a second cup and slid it across the marble counter. There's bread, cheese, fruit. I had my assistant stock the house last night. You have an assistant? Several. Running a territory requires infrastructure. He leaned against the counter, watching her with that unblinking attention. How did you sleep? Eventually, Elara accepted the coffee, grateful for the warmth. Those vampires last night, were they testing me or you? Both. House politics are complex. My protection only means something if you're deemed valuable enough to warrant it. His expression darkened. They'll report back to the elders. A decision will be made about whether I live or die. About whether House Nightshade formally shields you from House Thorn, which could escalate into open conflict. He said it calmly, as if discussing the weather. Your actions matter now. How you conduct yourself, what you say, who you trust. Elara set down her cup. Then teach me. Caspian's eyebrows rose. Teach you? You said I need to understand the situation. So teach me. Vampire politics, house law, whatever I need to know to survive this. She held his gaze. I won't be a helpless victim, waiting for someone else to decide my fate. For a long moment, Caspian simply looked at her. Then something like respect flickered across his face. Come with me, he said. He led her back to the library. But this time he pulled books from specific shelves, leather-bound volumes with titles in languages she couldn't read. He spread them across the table like a curriculum. Vampire society operates on 3 principles, he began. Territory, blood, and oath. Everything else flows from these. He opened the first book to a page marked with ribbon. Territory means each house controls specific regions. Crossing boundaries without permission is an act of war. The blood auction was on Nightshade territory. Morgana's attack violated that. So you could retaliate? If the elders approve it. But retaliation means war, and war means human casualties. The accords were written to prevent that. He moved to the next book. Blood is both sustenance and currency. How we feed defines our honor. Consent-based feeding, like the auction, is legal under the accords. Hunting unwilling victims is forbidden, but House Thorn wants to change that. They believe the accords make us weak, that we've forgotten our nature. Caspian's jaw tightened. They're not entirely wrong. Many young vampires never learn discipline. They feed recklessly, break laws, expose us to human authorities. The accords were meant to protect both species, but enforcement has become lax. Elara studied the books, the elegant handwriting, the careful records spanning centuries. And oath? What does that mean? Caspian hesitated. Vampires can bind themselves and others through blood oaths. A mutual exchange of blood creates a connection. The one who offers protection holds power over the protected. It's ancient magic, older than the houses. Something in his tone made her uneasy. Could you do that to me? Bind me? Yes. He met her eyes. But I won't. Blood oaths require consent from both parties, and even then, I find them distasteful. They're too easily abused. Have you ever made one? Once. With my sister. Before she died. I swore to protect her, and she swore to trust me. Pain flickered across his face. It didn't save her. Cancer doesn't care about magic. Elara touched his hand without thinking. I'm sorry. Caspian looked at their hands, hers warm and alive, his cool and still. He didn't pull away. She would have liked you. Catherine always believed humans and vampires could be equals, given the chance. He smiled sadly. House Thorn had her killed for saying so publicly. Elara's breath caught. What? They staged an accident. Made it look natural. But I knew. His fingers tightened slightly around hers. I've spent 70 years gathering proof, building alliances, waiting for the right moment to strike back. And then you walked into that auction and complicated everything. How? Because now they'll move faster. Use you as leverage to force my hand. He released her hand and stood, pacing to the window. If I protect you openly, they'll call it proof that I'm compromised by human sympathy. If I abandon you, I lose credibility with the moderate houses who still believe in the accords. Elara joined him at the window, looking out at the rain-soaked garden. So I'm a pawn. No, Caspian turned to face her. You're a catalyst. What you did defending me, standing up to the elders, showed courage most vampires don't possess. You're proof that humans aren't weak, aren't just prey. His silver eyes held hers. That terrifies House Thorn more than any army I could raise. One human with a vase? One human who refused to run when monsters fought in front of her. One human who demanded to be treated as an equal. He smiled slightly. Don't underestimate the power of that example. Alara's heart beat faster, though she couldn't say why. What do I do now? Learn. Adapt. Stay alive. Caspian gestured to the books. I'll teach you what I can. Vampire customs, political structures, how to recognize threats. You'll need it when the elders summon you. They're going to summon me? Tomorrow night. Formal testimony before the council. He said it gently, but she heard the warning underneath. They'll test you. Try to find weaknesses, inconsistencies. If you falter, they'll declare you unreliable and withdraw protection. Fear coiled in her stomach. And if I succeed? Then you become an asset House Nightshade can't afford to lose. He moved back to the table, opening another book, which brings its own complications. They spent the day in the library. Caspian taught her to recognize house symbols, explained the hierarchy of vampire authority, described the rituals and protocols that govern formal gatherings. He was patient, thorough, answering her questions without condescension. As afternoon faded to evening, Alara realized she was enjoying herself. The learning, yes, but also the company. Caspian was brilliant in an old-fashioned way, well-read, thoughtful, capable of explaining complex ideas with clarity. And when he forgot to maintain his careful distance, she glimpsed the man beneath the monster, lonely, grieving, still capable of hope. You're different than I expected, she said. During a lull, Caspian looked up from the book he'd been annotating. How so? I thought vampires would be cruel, arrogant. She searched for the word. Kind. In your own way. Kindness is a choice I make daily, he said quietly. It doesn't come naturally anymore. I have to remember to care, to see humans as more than food or tools. He closed the book. You make it easier. Why? Because you see me as I am. Not as House Nightshade's weapon, or Catherine's brother, or a monster to fear. Just Caspian. He smiled. It's been a long time since anyone did that. Alar's throat tightened. Marcus used to say, I saw the best in people. He meant it as an insult. Marcus was an idiot. The blunt assessment startled a laugh out of her. Caspian's smile widened, genuine and warm, then his expression changed, sharpening. He moved to the window in one fluid motion, looking out at the darkening street. What is it? Alara asked. Someone's watching the house. 3 vampires stationed at different points. His voice went cold. House Thorn. They're not attacking yet, just observing. What do they want? To see if I'll crack. If I'll make a mistake. He turned back to her, and his eyes glowed faintly in the dimness. Tomorrow's testimony is crucial. They'll be looking for any excuse to claim you're lying, or I've coerced you. Alara stood, squaring her shoulders. Then we'll give them nothing to use. Caspian studied her for a long moment. Then he crossed the space between them and took her hand, formal and deliberate. Thank you, he said, for trusting me, for not running. Where would I go? Alara meant it lightly, but Caspian's expression turned serious. Anywhere. I'd give you money, documents, protection until you were clear of the city. He squeezed her hand gently. You don't owe me anything, Alara. Remember that. But as she looked into his silver eyes, Alara realized she didn't want to run. Chapter 5. The council's ice council chambers were nothing like Alara had imagined. She'd expected Gothic grandeur, stone walls, iron candelabras, something from a medieval nightmare. Instead, Caspian led her into a converted warehouse in the city's industrial district. The interior had been transformed into a modern forum, tiered seating arranged in a semicircle, recessed lighting that mimicked twilight, and a floor of polished black marble that reflected everything like dark water. Vampires filled the seats, dozens of them representing different houses, all dressed in variations of formal attire. Their eyes tracked Alara as she entered, predatory and curious. Stay close, Caspian murmured. His hand rested lightly at the small of her back, guiding her. Don't speak unless directly addressed, and whatever happens, don't show fear. Easier said than done. Alara's heart hammered so loudly she was certain every vampire in the room could hear it. At the center of the semicircle sat 5 vampires on an elevated platform, the elders. Alara recognized 2 from the previous night. The others were older, in that indefinable way vampires carried age, not in their faces, but in their eyes, in the weight of their presence. The center seat was occupied by a woman who looked barely 30, but radiated authority like heat. Her hair was silver white, her suit tailored to perfection, and her eyes were the pale blue of winter ice. Caspian Nightshade, she said, her voice carrying effortlessly. You've brought your witness. Caspian inclined his head. Magistrate Winters. May I present Alara Thorn? A ripple of reaction moved through the chamber. Alara caught whispers. Thorn? Same name as House Thorn? Coincidence? Magistrate Winter's eyes narrowed. Thorn. Interesting. Are you related to House Thorn, Miss Thorn? Alara's mouth went dry. I don't know. It's just my family name. I'm not aware of any vampire connections. How convenient. This came from a vampire in the second tier, a man with cruel features and House Thorn's crest on his lapel. A human with our house name appears at a Nightshade auction, just as tensions escalate. You expect us to believe that's chance? I expect you to listen to her testimony before making accusations, Counselor Draven, Caspian said coldly. Draven smiled. Of course. Let's hear what the human has to say. He leaned forward. Tell us, Miss Thorn. What exactly did you witness 3 nights ago? Alara forced herself to breathe, to think past the fear. Caspian had prepared her for this. State facts. No embellishment. Stay calm. I attended a blood donation auction at the Nightshade estate, she began. I was there voluntarily, seeking payment for donation. Caspian Nightshade selected me as his donor. Before the feeding could begin, 3 vampires attacked. The leader identified herself as Morgana. She said the Accords were dead and House Thorn had new rules. She attacked Caspian. I intervened. How did you intervene? Magistrate Winters asked. I hit Morgana with a crystal vase. Silence. Then unexpectedly, laughter rippled through the chamber. Even some of the elders smiled. Draven's expression darkened. And then, Caspian threw Morgana across the room. Her companions retreated with her. Caspian brought me here for protection, stating that House Thorn would target me as a witness. Did Caspian coerce you into this testimony? Another elder asked. No, he's offered me safety, information, and the option to leave if I choose. Draven stood. This proves nothing. A human defending a vampire? She's clearly been compromised. Blood-bound perhaps, or promised immortality. I've done neither, Caspian said, his voice sharp. And your accusation insults this council's intelligence. Magistrate Winters raised a hand. Peace. She looked at Alara. Why did you defend Caspian Nightshade, Miss Thorn? You owed him nothing. You could have fled and likely survived. It was the question Alara had been asking herself for 3 days. She met the magistrate's ice-blue eyes and told the truth, because what Morgana was doing was wrong. She attacked someone on neutral ground, violated laws meant to protect both species, and did it with the kind of cruelty that said she enjoyed it. Alara's voice strengthened. Caspian wasn't just a vampire in that moment. He was a person being attacked unfairly, and I don't stand by when I see that. Not anymore. The chamber went absolutely silent. Magistrate Winters studied her for a long moment. Not anymore? What changed? Alara hesitated. This was personal, raw, but something told her the truth mattered here more than dignity. I spent 4 years with someone who made me feel small, who took everything I had and left me with nothing. I promised myself I wouldn't be that person again, the one who stays quiet, who lets things happen, who's too afraid to act. She lifted her chin. So when I saw violence happening in front of me, I acted. That's all. The magistrate's expression softened fractionally. I see. She looked at Caspian. You've chosen your witness well. She has spine. She chose herself, Caspian replied. I simply recognized it. Draven slammed his hand on the armrest. This is absurd. One human's testimony doesn't excuse nightshades. Aggression toward our house. Your house attacked mine, Caspian interrupted, his patience clearly fraying. On my territory, during a sanctioned event. That is aggression, Counselor. You've been building alliances against us for months because you've been violating the Accords. Enough. Magistrate Winters' voice cracked like a whip. Both vampires fell silent. This council will deliberate. Miss Thorn, you will wait outside. Caspian, you will remain. Caspian glanced at Alara, concern flickering across his face, but he nodded. An attendant human surprisingly led Alara to an antechamber. The door closed, leaving her alone with her racing thoughts. She'd done it, testified without breaking, but had it been enough? Minutes crawled past. Alara paced, her mind replaying every word, every expression. Draven's hostility, the magistrate's careful neutrality, the way other vampires had watched her, like a curiosity, something unexpected. The door opened, but it wasn't the attendant. It was a vampire Alara didn't recognize, young-looking, beautiful, with dark hair and eyes like polished onyx. "Miss Thorne," she said, her voice musical. "I'm Serafini, House Blackwell. I wanted to speak with you privately." Warning bells rang in Alara's mind. "I don't think I should relax. I'm not here to threaten you." Serafini closed the door and leaned against it. "I'm here to warn you. What you've stepped into is bigger than you realize. I know House Thorne wants the Accords abolished. It's not just House Thorne. There are 6 houses pushing for change, and 3 more who'd join them if they thought they could win." Serafini's expression turned serious. "Caspian is brilliant, honorable, and utterly committed to peace, which makes him dangerous to people who profit from chaos. Why are you telling me this? Because you matter now, whether you want to or not." Serafini moved closer. "That testimony? It wasn't just about an attack. It was about showing the council that humans can be more than victims or cattle. That we need them as witnesses, allies, participants in our world." She smiled sadly. "Some vampires don't want that proven. It undermines everything they believe." Alara's stomach nodded. "So they'll come after me. They'll try, but Caspian won't let them reach you. That man has spent 70 years preparing for this fight." Serafini's eyes glittered. "The question is, are you prepared to be part of it?" Before Alara could answer, the door opened again. The attendant gestured. "The council has reached a decision." Serafini squeezed Alara's shoulder once, then vanished down a side corridor. Alara returned to the chamber. Every vampire was seated, their expressions unreadable. Caspian stood at the center alone, his posture rigid. Magistrate Winters stood. "The council has reviewed the testimony and evidence. We find that House Thorne violated the Accords through unprovoked attack on Nightshade territory. Morgana of House Thorne is hereby declared rogue and subject to sanction." Relief flooded through Alara, but then Draven stood. "We protest this decision. House Thorne will not recognize. House Thorne will comply, or face expulsion from the council." Winder's voice was steel. "The vote was 7-3, Counselor. You've lost." Draven's face twisted with rage. His eyes found Alara, and the hatred in them was palpable. "This isn't over, human. You've made powerful enemies tonight. She's also made powerful friends," a new voice said. A vampire Alara hadn't noticed before stood ancient, dignified, with silver threading through his dark hair. "House Corvus extends its protection to Miss Thorne as well. Any who move against her move against us." 2 more vampires stood, echoing the declaration. Caspian's expression transformed surprise, gratitude, something deeper. Magistrate Winters nodded. "So witnessed. Miss Thorne is under multi-house protection. This session is adjourned." The chamber emptied quickly. Caspian reached Alara in 3 strides, his hands gentle on her shoulders. "Are you all right?" he asked. "I think so." "What just happened?" "You won." His smile was fierce, proud. "They tried to break you, and you didn't bend. And now 4 houses have publicly declared you're worth protecting. Is that good?" "It's unprecedented." He guided her toward the exit. "It also means you're more valuable and more vulnerable than ever." Outside, the night air was cold and clean. Alara breathed it in, trying to process everything. "Caspian?" she said. "That vampire." "Serafini." She said this was bigger than the attack. His expression clouded. "She's right. We should talk. But not here." A car waited at the curb, different from before, armored and discreet. Caspian helped her inside. As they pulled away, Alara noticed headlights following them. "Are we being followed?" she asked. Caspian glanced back, his jaw tight. "Yes, House Thorne won't let this go quietly. What do we do?" He met her eyes, and in the darkness, his silver gaze seemed to glow. "We prepare for war." Chapter 6. Blood and Oaths. Safe house was different from Caspian's Victorian home, modern, sterile, designed for defense rather than comfort. Steel shutters covered the windows, and the door required both a code and biometric scan to open. "We can't go back to my house," Caspian explained as he guided Alara inside. "Thorne knows the location. They'll strike there first." The interior was sparse, reinforced walls, minimal furniture, supplies stacked in military precision. Another vampire waited inside, the silver-haired man from the council who'd offered protection, Victor Corvus. He introduced himself with a slight bow. "Forgive the accommodations." This building was designed for sieges, not hospitality. Your house, Corvus, Alara said, remembering. You offered protection. I did. And I meant it. Victor's eyes were kind, despite their inhuman gold color. What Caspian is attempting maintaining the accords, proving coexistence works matters deeply to some of us. You've become a symbol of that possibility. I just told the truth, precisely. In a world of ancient politics and careful lies, truth is revolutionary. He looked at Caspian. Thorn's people are mobilizing. 3 cars followed you from the council chambers. My people intercepted too, but the third got away. Caspian's expression hardened. How long do we have? Hours? Maybe less. Morgana survived your encounter, and she wants blood. Victor moved to a weapons cabinet, opening it to reveal an arsenal. They won't attack while council protection holds, but they'll look for loopholes. Isolated ambush, accidents. They're creative when motivated. Alara's legs felt weak. She sat on the nearest chair, the reality crashing over her. This is really happening. Vampires are going to try to kill me. Caspian knelt in front of her, his cool hands taking hers. I won't let that happen. You can't be with me every second. No, but I can give you tools to protect yourself. He glanced at Victor. Show her. Victor retrieved a slim case from the weapons cabinet. Inside, nestled in velvet, was a knife. The blade gleamed silver, etched with symbols that seemed to writhe in the light. Consecrated silver, Victor explained. Blessed by 7 different faiths, quenched in water from holy sites around the world. It won't kill a vampire, but it will incapacitate one long enough for you to escape. Alara touched the handle hesitantly. I've never used a weapon. Then you'll learn. Caspian stood, offering his hand. Tonight, starting now. The next 2 hours were grueling. Victor and Caspian took turns teaching her how to hold the blade, where to strike for maximum effect, how to create distance and find escape routes. They were patient but uncompromising, making her repeat movements until muscle memory began to form. Vampires are faster than you, Caspian said, circling her like a predator. Stronger. Your advantages are creativity and unpredictability. We expect humans to freeze or flee. Do neither. He lunged. Alara dodged, slashed where he'd taught her throat level. The blade passed through empty air as he twisted away, but he nodded approval. Better. Again. They drilled until Alara's arms ached and sweat soaked through her borrowed clothes. Finally, Victor called a halt. She's exhausted. Rest now, training later. Caspian studied Alara with concern. He's right. You need food and sleep. But as Victor moved to prepare a meal, a sound cut through the safe house. The security alarm. Shrill and urgent, all 3 of them froze. Perimeter breach, Victor said, already moving. East wall. Multiple contacts. Caspian pressed the knife into Alara's hands. Back room. Lock the door. Don't come out unless I call you by name, full name. Not Alara. Not Miss Thorne. Alara Thorne. Do you understand? What about you? I'll be fine. Go, now. Alara ran. The back room was reinforced like a vault, with its own ventilation and supplies. She locked the door as heavy impacts shook the building. Voices shouted, some she recognized, others foreign, then fighting. Crashes, breaking glass, sounds that could only be bodies hitting walls. Alara crouched against the far wall, knife gripped in white-knuckled hands, and prayed to God she'd stopped believing in years ago. Silence fell suddenly, oppressively. Footsteps approached the door, slow, deliberate. Alara? Caspian's voice, strained but recognizable. It's safe. Alara's hand went to the lock, then stopped. Full name. He'd said he'd use her full name. The doorknob rattled. Alara, open the door. I need to know you're all right. Not her full name. No, Alara said, her voice shaking. Silence. Then laughter, cold, female. Definitely not Caspian. Clever human. The voice shifted, losing Caspian's timbre. Morgana sends her regards. Alara's heart nearly stopped. Where's Caspian? Occupied. My associates are keeping both Nightshade and Corvus quite busy. Something metallic scraped against the door. This vault won't hold forever. And when it opens, I'm going to drain you slowly. Make you watch as I take everything. Alara looked around desperately. The room had no windows, 1 door, supplies, but no weapons beyond her knife. She was trapped. Think. Use creativity and unpredictability. The ventilation shaft. Too small for a vampire. But Alara was human-sized and motivated by terror. She dragged a supply crate beneath the vent, climbed up, and began unscrewing the grate with the tip of her knife. Her hands shook so badly she dropped it twice, but finally the grate came free. Behind her, the door began to buckle. Alara pulled herself into the shaft just as the door exploded inward. She scrambled forward, the metal walls, claustrophobic and sharp, moving toward what she hoped was another exit. Behind her, cursing, "Find where that shaft leads." Alara crawled faster, ignoring the pain in her knees and elbows. The shaft branched. She chose left randomly, praying it was right. Ahead, faint light. Another grate. She kicked it until it gave way and tumbled out into the main room. Bodies everywhere. Victor was down, unconscious or worse. 3 vampires Alara didn't recognize lay in pieces. And Caspian was pinned against the wall by 2 vampires, blood streaming from wounds across his chest and face. His silver eyes found hers, and horror flooded them. "Run," he gasped, but Morgana stepped into view from the hallway, blocking the exit. She looked worse than at the auction burns across her face from whatever Caspian had done to her, her red leather scorched black. "There you are," she purred. "The little human who thinks she matters." Alara gripped her knife. She was outnumbered, outmatched, about to die, but she thought of Caspian's words, "Do neither freeze nor flee." "I do matter," Alara said, surprised by the steadiness in her voice. "The council said so. 4 houses protect me. Kill me, and you start a war you can't win." Morgana laughed. "You think politics protect you? Thorn doesn't care about council votes. We're the future vampires who take what we want. Then you're idiots." Alara shifted her stance the way Caspian had taught her. "Because the future belongs to whoever adapts. And you're still stuck in the past." Morgana's smile vanished. "Brave words for prey." She moved, blur of motion, claws extended. Alara didn't think. She lunged forward instead of back, dropping low like Victor had shown her. The consecrated silver blade caught Morgana across the thigh. Morgana shrieked, a sound that shattered glass. She stumbled, smoke rising from the wound. The vampires holding Caspian turned in surprise. It was enough. Caspian erupted from their grip with terrifying violence. He moved like death itself, tearing through them with inhuman speed. In seconds, both vampires were down, not moving. Morgana tried to flee, but Caspian was on her. He caught her by the throat, lifted her off the ground. "You violated neutral ground," he said, his voice utterly devoid of humanity. "Attacked under council protection. Threatened my house. The council can't. The council isn't who you should fear right now." His grip tightened. "I am." There was a sickening crack. Morgana went limp. Caspian dropped her and turned to Alara. His eyes were still that terrible silver white, his face splattered with blood, some his, some not. He looked like the monster he'd warned her he could be, but when he reached for her, his hands were gentle. "Are you hurt?" he asked, his voice human again. "No. You're bleeding. I'll heal." He pulled her against his chest, his cool arms wrapping around her. "You were magnificent. Terrifying and magnificent." Alara started shaking then, adrenaline giving way to shock. Caspian held her through it, murmuring reassurances in a language she didn't recognize. Victor groaned from across the room. "Did we win?" "Barely," Caspian said. "How bad are you?" "I'll live. Or continue existing. Whatever." Victor sat up slowly, surveying the damage. "But this safe house is compromised. We need to move." Caspian nodded. He looked down at Alara, still in his arms. "Can you walk?" "I think so." He helped her stand, keeping one arm around her waist. "There's another location. Deeper underground. Thorn won't find it." As they moved toward the exit, Alara looked back at Morgana's body. "Is she dead?" "For now. Vampires are hard to kill permanently." Caspian's expression was grim. "But she won't wake for days, and when she does, the council will be waiting, outside." Dawn was threatening the horizon. Caspian moved them quickly to an armored van waiting in the alley. As they drove through the empty streets, Alara finally asked the question burning in her mind. "Why are you doing this?" "Really? I'm just one human." Caspian was quiet for a long moment. Then he took her hand. "Because you're not just one human. You're proof that we can be better than our nature. That choice matters more than instinct." His silver eyes met hers. "And because somewhere in the last 4 days, you became someone I can't bear to lose." The honesty in his voice stole Alara's breath. Before she could respond, Victor called from the front. "We're here." Underground parking. 5 levels down. The new safe house was a bunker, but it was equipped for long-term occupation. As Victor secured the entrance, Caspian led Alara to a room with an actual bed. Rest, he said. When you wake, we'll plan our next move. But Alara caught his hand before he could leave. Stay, please, just until I fall asleep. Something shifted in his expression: surprise, warmth, longing. All right, he said softly. He sat beside the bed, while Alara curled under the blankets, exhaustion dragging her down. The last thing she felt was his cool hand in hers, steady and real. Chapter 7. Beneath the surface, Alara woke to the smell of coffee and the unsettling realization that she had no idea what time it was. The bunker had no windows, no natural light, just the soft glow of recessed LEDs that could have meant noon or midnight. She found Caspian in what passed for a living area, sitting at a table covered in papers and old photographs. He'd changed clothes, the blood washed away, but his face still carried the exhaustion of battle. Victor was nowhere to be seen. How long did I sleep? Alara asked. 14 hours. Caspian looked up, and his expression softened. You needed it. How do you feel? Like I fought vampires and crawled through air ducts. She moved to the coffee pot, grateful someone had stocked it. Where's Victor? Coordinating with the other houses. Morgana's attack violated so many protocols that even Thorne's allies are reconsidering their positions. He gestured to the empty chair across from him. Sit. We need to talk. The seriousness in his tone made her nervous, but Alara sat. She noticed the photographs spread across the table, old black and white images of people in period dress, some formal portraits, others candid shots. My family, Caspian said, following her gaze. Human family before I was turned. He touched one photograph, a young man who looked remarkably like him, standing beside a woman in a wedding dress. That's me in 1846, my wedding day. Alara's chest tightened. You were married? For 6 months. Then fever took her. I was. Not well after. Reckless. When a vampire offered immortality, I accepted without understanding the cost. His finger moved to another photo. Catherine, my sister. The only family I had left after the turning. She stayed with me, helped me adapt. Reminded me that being a vampire didn't mean surrendering my humanity. You loved her very much. I did. And when Thorne killed her, I swore I'd see them destroyed. He gathered the photographs, handling them with reverence. For 70 years, that oath sustained me, kept me focused. Then you appeared, and suddenly I had something else to protect. Something that mattered more than revenge. Alara's heart hammered. Caspian, let me finish. He set the photos aside and leaned forward, his silver eyes intense. What I said in the van was true. You've become someone I can't bear to lose. But that puts you in impossible danger. Thorne will use you to hurt me. Other houses will try to leverage you for political gain. You'll never be safe as long as you're connected to me. So what are you saying? I'm saying I can give you a way out. New identity, relocation, enough money to start over anywhere in the world. You'd be free of all this, the politics, the danger, the constant threat. His voice was steady, but pain flickered beneath it. I'd make sure you were safe, even if it meant never seeing you again. Alara stared at him. He was offering her everything she'd thought she wanted 4 days ago: escape, safety, a fresh start. The practical choice. The smart choice. And if I don't want that? She asked quietly. Caspian's expression shifted, hope and fear warring across his face. Then you need to understand what you're choosing. This isn't a fairy tale. Vampires don't age, don't change, don't die easily. If you stay in my world, you'll grow older, while I remain the same. You'll face constant danger. Any relationship between us would be scrutinized, weaponized, used against both of us. You're assuming I want a relationship, don't you? The question was gentle, but his eyes saw straight through her. Alara's throat went tight. The truth was complicated, messy. She barely knew him. But in 4 days, Caspian had shown her more honesty, more respect, more genuine care than Marcus had in 4 years. He'd protected her, taught her, trusted her with his grief and his past. And when he looked at her, she felt seen in a way that was both terrifying and exhilarating. I don't know what I want, she admitted. A week ago, my biggest problem was paying rent. Now I'm hiding from vampire assassins and testifying to immortal councils. It's too much to fast. I know. Which is why I'm offering you the choice. Caspian reached across the table, his hand open, palm up. Stay or go. Either way, I'll protect you. But you need to decide based on what you want, not what you think you owe me. Alara looked at his offered hand, cool, steady, patient. She thought about running again, disappearing into a new city, a new name, a new life built on silence and safety. But she'd been silent for so long, safe and small and slowly disappearing. She placed her hand in his. I'm not ready to decide about forever, she said. But I'm not ready to run either. I want to understand this world, learn what I'm capable of. And she met his eyes. I want to know you, the real you, not just the protector or the house leader. The man who still keeps wedding photos and mourns his sister and reads Latin at 3 in the morning. Caspian's fingers closed around hers, gentle but firm. That man is complicated, damaged, still learning how to hope. Good, I'm damaged too. We can figure it out together. Something like wonder crossed his face. Then he smiled, genuine, warm, transforming his features from beautiful to devastating. You're remarkable, he said softly. Before Alara could respond, Victor's voice crackled through an intercom. Caspian, we have a situation. The moment shattered. Caspian was on his feet instantly, all business. What kind? Council summons. Emergency session. They want both of you, now. Caspian cursed in a language Alara didn't recognize. Thorns moving faster than expected. They're going to demand restitution for Morgana's incapacitation. Can they do that? Alara asked. She attacked us. Vampire law is complex. They'll argue she was provoked, that my protection of you constitutes interference in House Thorn business. He pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. Victor, confirm our attendance. Request House Corvus and House Blackwell representation. Already done. Meetings in 2 hours. Caspian looked at Alara. You don't have to go. I can represent both our interests. No, Alara stood, squaring her shoulders. If they're going to talk about me, I should be there. I'm tired of other people deciding my fate. Pride flickered across Caspian's face. Then we should prepare. This session will be hostile. Thorn will throw everything at us. The next 90 minutes were intensive. Caspian coached her on council protocol, explained the political alignments, warned her about specific vampires to watch. Victor arrived with formal clothing, a black dress for Alara that was both elegant and armor-like. Image matters, Victor explained. You need to look like someone worth protecting, someone who belongs in these chambers. As Alara dressed, she caught her reflection in a mirror. The woman staring back looked different from the one who'd walked into that blood auction. Harder, sharper, less afraid. Ready? Caspian asked from the doorway. He wore a dark suit that emphasized his predatory grace, his silver eyes luminous in the artificial light. As I'll ever be. The council chambers were packed, more vampires than before, tensions visibly higher. Alara felt the weight of their stares as she entered with Caspian. House Thorn's section was full, Draven at the center, his expression venomous. Magistrate Winters called the session to order. We're here to address House Thorn's formal complaint regarding the incapacitation of Morgana Thorn and the deaths of 3 Thorn operatives during an alleged defensive action. Alleged? Caspian's voice cut through the chamber. They attacked a secured safe house under multi-house protection. There's nothing alleged about it. Draven stood. You provoked that attack by harboring a human who shares our house name. We have reason to believe Alara Thorn is a blood relative, stolen from us generations ago. Her presence with you is theft. The accusation hit like a physical blow. Alara's mind raced. Could it be true? Could she actually be related to House Thorn? That's absurd, Victor said, rising. You have no evidence. We have genealogical records suggesting a Thorn bloodline in this region dating back to 100 years. A human branch that was lost during the Civil War. Draven's smile was cruel. If proven, she belongs to us by blood, right? The chamber erupted in argument. Magistrate Winters called for order, but the damage was done. Alara felt the shift. Vampires who'd supported her now looked uncertain. If she was Thorn blood, everything changed. Caspian moved to her side, his presence steady. This is a stalling tactic. They can't prove lineage without genetic testing. And she's under no obligation to provide it. Actually, Magistrate Winters said, her voice cutting through the chaos. Under Section 12 of the Bloodline Accords, any human claimed by a house may be tested if 3 council members vote to compel it. Alara's stomach dropped. You can force me to give blood? If the vote passes, yes. Winters looked genuinely regretful. I'm sorry, Miss Thorn, but the law is clear. This is exactly what Thorn wants, Caspian said, his voice tight with fury. They're weaponizing ancient laws to all in favor of compelling genetic testing. Winters interrupted. Hands rose. Elara counted them, her heart sinking. 5, 6, 7. Motion passes, Winters announced. Miss Thorne, you will submit to testing. Results will be available within 24 hours. The chamber spun. Elara felt Caspian's hand on her arm, steadying her. If the results prove Thorne lineage, Draven said, his triumph barely concealed, we will invoke blood right and claim her as house property. Over my corpse, Caspian growled. Draven's smile widened. That can be arranged. The session dissolved into barely controlled chaos. Victor and other allied vampires surrounded Elara and Caspian, forming a protective barrier as they exited. In the car afterward, Elara finally found her voice. Can they really claim me? Like property? Not if I have anything to say about it, Caspian said grimly. But yes, blood right is ancient law. If you're Thorne lineage, they have legal standing. Then we fight the test results, Victor suggested. They'll use council-approved labs. The results will be legitimate. Caspian looked at Elara, his expression torn. I'm so sorry. I never imagined they'd use this angle. Elara's mind raced. If she was Thorne blood, what did that mean? Would she have to join them? Serve them? The thought made her sick. What if, she said slowly, I am related to them? What then? Caspian's jaw tightened. Then we find another way. Blood right can be contested through ritual challenge, through council appeal, through he stopped, something occurring to him. Through what? Elara pressed. Through competing blood claim. He looked at her intently. If another house had equal or stronger claim to your loyalty, Thorne's right could be invalidated. How would that work? Caspian was silent for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was careful. Through a blood oath. If you swore yourself to House Nightshade voluntarily, it would supersede any genetic claim Thorne might have. Elara remembered what he'd told her about blood oaths. The binding. The power imbalance. His stated distaste for them. You said you'd never bind me. I wouldn't. The oath would be consensual, limited in scope, and breakable at your will. His silver eyes held hers. But it would tie us together in ways that can't be undone easily. I won't ask that of you unless you truly understand what it means. The car fell silent. Elara felt the weight of the choice settling over her like a shroud. 24 hours until the test results. 24 hours to decide if she'd bind herself to Caspian or belong to House Thorne. Chapter 8. The weight of Shoiseth Bunker felt smaller after the council session. Elara paced the living area, unable to sit still, her mind churning through impossible options. Caspian and Victor spoke in low voices near the communications console, coordinating with allied houses, but their careful planning felt distant, abstract. She was the one who'd have to bleed, the one who'd have to choose. The testing is scheduled for dawn, Victor said, turning toward her. Council-sanctioned facility, neutral ground. Both houses will have observers present, and after. Elara asked, how long until results? 12 hours, maybe less. Vampire genetics aren't complex, we can trace bloodlines accurately. Victor's expression was sympathetic. I know this feels invasive. I'm sorry. Elara nodded numbly. She'd spent her whole life not knowing where she came from. Her parents had died when she was young, raised by an aunt who'd shared little family history. The name Thorne had meant nothing to her, just a name on legal documents and credit cards. Now it might define her entire future. Caspian dismissed Victor with quiet thanks, then moved to where Elara stood by the bookshelf. He didn't touch her, but his presence was grounding. Talk to me, he said softly. What are you thinking? That a week ago, I had no family. Now I might belong to a vampire house that wants to use me as a weapon against you. She laughed bitterly. It's almost funny. It's not funny. It's cruel. Caspian's voice held restrained fury. Thorne weaponizes everything: grief, loneliness, blood itself. They've probably known about the Thorne lineage for years, waiting for the right moment to exploit it. Why didn't they claim me before? If I'm related, they could have found me anytime. Because you weren't useful before. You were just another human struggling to survive. His jaw tightened. Now you're the woman who defended me publicly, who testified against them, who proved humans could stand as equals. That makes you dangerous. So they'll either destroy you or control you. Elara turned to face him fully. Tell me about the blood oath. Everything. No protection. No softening. I need the truth. Caspian was quiet for a moment, then nodded. He gestured to the couch, and they sat facing each other. A blood oath is ancient magic, he began. It predates the houses, predates most vampire civilization. When two beings exchange blood willingly and speak binding words, a connection forms. It's not mind control, you'd still have free will, your own thoughts. But you'd feel my presence always. Know if I was in danger, if I needed you. And I'd feel the same about you. That doesn't sound terrible. There's more. The oath creates obligation. If I called you, you'd feel compelled to answer. Not forced. But the pull would be intense. And anything I asked of you within the oath's parameters, you'd find nearly impossible to refuse. His silver eyes were steady, honest. I would have power over you, Alara. Power. I've spent 70 years refusing to take over anyone, but you said it could be limited in scope. Made breakable. Yes, we could craft the words carefully. Oath to House Nightshade's protection, not to me personally. Oath with sunset clauses, conditions for dissolution. It would be weaker than traditional oaths, which is what we'd want. He leaned forward. But even a weak blood oath is binding. Once made, breaking it causes pain to both parties. Some never recover from severing the connection. Alara processed this. Have you ever made a blood oath? Once, with Catherine. Pain flickered across his face. When she was dying, I offered to turn her. She refused, said she wanted to die human, free. So instead we made an oath. I swore to protect the ideals she believed in, and she swore to forgive me for failing to save her. His voice roughened. When she died, the oath broke. I felt it snap like a bone. It took me years to function properly again. I'm sorry. I didn't know you need to know. You need to understand that this isn't some romantic gesture. It's real magic with real consequences. He took her hand, his touch cool and careful. If we do this, we'll be connected until one of us dies, or we formally break the oath. Even if you walk away tomorrow, you'd carry part of me with you always. Alara's heart raced. And if the test shows I'm not Thorn blood, do we still need the oath? No. You'd be free, protected by the council ruling, safe from Thorn's claims. He paused. But if the test proves lineage, the oath is the only legal counter we have. Without it, Thorn can invoke blood right and the council must comply. What would they do to me? Caspian's expression darkened. Use you. Force you to recant your testimony. Claim I coerced you. They'd parade you before the council as proof that humans are weak, easily manipulated. And once you'd served that purpose, he stopped, jaw clenched. They'd kill me, Alara finished quietly. Probably. Or turn you against your will, make you one of them. His hand tightened around hers. I won't let either happen, but I need you to understand. The choice isn't between freedom and bondage. It's between an oath to me or ownership by Thorn. The weight of it settled over Alara like a physical thing. She looked at their joined hands, her skin warm and alive against his marble coolness. In another life, another circumstance, maybe they could have been something simple. But there was nothing simple about vampire politics or ancient magic or wars fought in shadows. If I make the oath, she said slowly, what would you ask of me? Nothing you wouldn't freely give. Your testimony when needed, your trust, your presence at my side when politics demand it. He met her eyes. I'd ask you to let me protect you, to stay alive, to remember that your life has value beyond what you can offer me or anyone else. Alara's throat tightened. That's all? That's everything. His voice softened. You think you're ordinary, Alara. Broken even. Marcus convinced you of that. But you're not. You're brave and clever and stubborn enough to hit a vampire with a vase. You're someone worth protecting, worth fighting for. I'd ask you to believe that. Tears pricked her eyes. She blinked them away, refusing to cry. And if I can't believe that, then I'll believe it for both of us until you can. Caspian released her hand and stood, giving her space. You have until dawn to decide. Whatever you choose, I'll honor it. Stay and take the oath, or leave and take your chances with new identity. Either way, you're not alone in this. He moved toward the door, clearly intending to give her privacy. Caspian, he stopped, looking back. If we make the oath and the connection forms, will you feel what I feel? My fear, my doubt, all of it. Yes, all of it. He smiled slightly. The good and the bad, your courage and your terror, your hope and your grief. Blood oaths don't discriminate. That seems invasive. It is. Which is why I've avoided them for 70 years. His expression turned serious. But with you, I think I could bear it. I think I'd want to know, to understand you that completely. The honesty stole her breath. Alara nodded, unable to speak. Caspian left her alone then, the door closing softly behind him. Alara sat in the silence, her mind racing. She thought about Marcus, how he'd isolated her, convinced her she was too much or not enough, always inadequate. She thought about the auction, the desperate choice that had led her into this impossible world. She thought about Caspian, dangerous and kind, ancient and grieving, offering her partnership instead of possession. The blood oath terrified her. But so did belonging to House Thorn. So did running forever. At least with Caspian, she'd be choosing, actively deciding her fate instead of letting it happen to her. Hours passed. Victor brought food she barely touched. The bunker's lights dimmed, in approximation of night, though time felt meaningless underground. Finally, near what she guessed was 3 a.m., Alara made her decision. She found Caspian in a small library space, reading by lamplight. He looked up as she entered, setting the book aside. "I want to do it," Alara said. "The blood oath. If the test proves I'm Thorn blood, I want to bind myself to House Nightshade." Caspian stood slowly. "You're certain?" "Once we begin, I'm certain. Not because I'm out of options, but because I trust you. Because you've never lied to me or tried to make me into something I'm not." She moved closer. "And because if I'm going to be bound to anyone, I'd rather it be someone who sees me as an equal." Something powerful shifted in his expression, relief, gratitude, something deeper she couldn't name. "Then we'll wait for the results," he said. "And if Thorn blood is confirmed, we'll perform the oath before they can invoke blood right." He reached out, touching her face with careful reverence. "Thank you for trusting me with this." Alara leaned into his touch, the coolness of his palm grounding. "Don't make me regret it. I'll spend eternity trying not to." His thumb brushed her cheekbone. "You should rest. Dawn comes soon, and the testing won't be pleasant." But Alara didn't move. She stood close to him, feeling the strange non-heartbeat of his presence, the ancient patient stillness of him. "Caspian," she whispered, "are you afraid?" "Terrified," he admitted. "Of failing you. Of the oath changing what we're building into something twisted. Of losing you before I've had the chance to know you fully." His silver eyes met hers. "But I'm more afraid of doing nothing. Of letting Thorn take you without fighting." Alara understood. She was afraid too, but fear had never stopped her before. "Then we fight," she said. Caspian smiled, fierce and full of promise. Together. Dawn came like a verdict. The facility was sterile white, fluorescent bright, filled with vampires in lab coats who handled her blood sample with clinical detachment. Draven watched from behind glass, his smile predatory. Caspian stood beside Alara, his hand in hers, as the needle drew her blood. 12 hours, the technician said. Results will be conclusive. They returned to the bunker in silence. Victor had prepared everything needed for the oath ritual: blade, ancient text, witnesses from allied houses. Now all they could do was wait. Alara tried to rest, but couldn't. She paced, read without comprehending. Accepted coffee. She didn't drink. Caspian stayed near, a steady presence. Not hovering, just there. TR11. Victor's phone rang. He answered, his expression grave. "The results are early," he said, looking at Alara. "They've been delivered to the council." And Caspian demanded. Victor's silence was answer enough. "Positive match," he said finally. Alara Thorn shares confirmed genetic markers with House Thorn's founding bloodline. Draven has already filed formal claim. The room spun. Alara sat down hard, the reality crashing over her. She was Thorn blood. Actually, genetically connected to the house that wanted to destroy everything Caspian stood for. Caspian knelt in front of her, his hands taking hers. "Look at me," he said firmly. "This changes nothing. We anticipated this. We're ready." "I'm one of them," Alara whispered. "No, you're one of us. If you'll have us." His silver eyes burned with intensity. "The oath, Alara. We do it now, before Thorn can move. Do you still consent?" This was it. The moment. The choice that would define everything. Alara thought of Draven's cruel smile, of Morgana's attack, of everything House Thorn represented. Then she thought of Caspian's patient teaching, Victor's protection, the vampires who'd stood for her in council. "Yes," she said clearly. "I consent. Bind me to House Nightshade." Caspian's expression transformed with relief and determination. "Then let's begin." Chapter 9. Blood and Promises. Witnesses gathered in the bunker's largest room: Victor, Serafini from House Blackwell, and 2 vampires Alara didn't recognize but who wore House Corvus insignia. They formed a circle, their faces solemn, ancient. This wasn't theater. This was ritual older than nations. Caspian had changed into formal attire, a black suit with silver threading that caught the light like starlight. He looked every inch the immortal lord, powerful and severe. But when his eyes found Alara's, they softened. "Are you ready?" he asked quietly. Alara wore a simple white dress Victor had provided. Ready felt inadequate for what she was about to do, but she nodded anyway. Caspian led her to the circle's center. A small table held the ritual implements, an ornate silver blade with symbols etched along its length, a crystal bowl, and an ancient book open to a page covered in flowing script. "The oath has 3 parts, Caspian explained, his voice carrying to the witnesses. "The cut where we each offer blood freely. The words where we speak the binding. The seal where the magic completes itself." He picked up the blade. "At any point before the seal, you can stop. After that, it's permanent until formally broken." "I understand." Victor stepped forward, reading from the book in a language that sounded like Latin, but older, rougher. The other witnesses joined in, their voices creating a harmony that raised the hair on Alara's arms. The air itself seemed to thicken, charged with power. Caspian held out his hand, palm up. With swift precision, he drew the blade across it. Blood welled darker than human blood, almost black in the dim light. It dripped into the crystal bowl with soft sounds like falling rain. He offered the blade to Alara. "Your turn. Don't be afraid, I'll heal any wound you take tonight." Alara took the blade. It was heavier than expected, warm from Caspian's touch. She pressed it to her palm and pulled. Sharp pain, then blood bright red against her skin, stark contrast to Caspian's darkness. Her blood joined his in the bowl, the 2 colors swirling but not quite mixing. "Not yet. Now the words," Caspian said. He took her bleeding hand in his, their blood mingling between their palms. His silver eyes held hers with absolute focus. "Repeat after me. I, Alara Thorn, offer my blood freely to House Nightshade, offer my blood freely to House Nightshade, accepting protection, demanding honor, binding myself to those who would stand as equals, not masters." Alara repeated the words, her voice stronger than she expected. This wasn't submission. The language itself declared partnership. Caspian continued, his voice dropping to something almost reverent. "I, Caspian Nightshade, accept this blood as sacred trust. I swear to protect without possessing, to guide without controlling, to honor the humanity I am no longer capable of claiming myself." The air crackled. Alara felt something shift, not painful, but present, like a door opening inside her chest. "I bind this oath to 3 conditions," Caspian said, and Alara recognized this as the part they'd crafted carefully the night before. "First, this oath may be broken by either party with 30 days' notice and mutual agreement. Second, no command given under this oath may violate Alara Thorn's core autonomy or force actions against her conscience. Third, this oath extends only to protection and alliance, not to servitude or ownership." Victor nodded approval. This was unprecedented. Blood oaths were traditionally absolute. These conditions made it almost a contract between equals. "Do you accept these terms?" Caspian asked Alara. "I accept." "Then we seal." He lifted their joined hands over the bowl. Their mingled blood dripped down, joining what was already there. "By blood freely given, by words truly spoken, by magic older than memory, I claim Alara Thorn as House Nightshade's daughter, protected and honored, bound and free." He brought their joined hands to his lips and kissed her palm, right over the cut. His tongue touched the wound, and Alara felt a jolt like electricity. "Now you," he whispered, "accept my blood. Seal the bond." Alara's heart hammered. This was at the point of no return. She lifted their hands to her own lips, tasting salt and copper and something else, something ancient. Power flooded through her, warm and cold simultaneously, filling empty spaces she hadn't known existed. The witnesses' chanting reached crescendo. The bowl on the table began to glow, soft silver light that grew brighter and brighter until it shattered. The light exploded outward in a wave that knocked everyone back a step. Alara gasped, clutching Caspian's hand as sensation overwhelmed her. She could feel him not physically, but present. A new awareness sitting beside her own consciousness, silver bright and steady. "Alara." His voice in her mind, clear as speech. "Can you hear me?" Yes. She didn't speak aloud, but knew he heard. "Is this normal? For blood oaths?" "Yes. We're connected now. Truly connected." The witnesses were already moving. Victor approached with bandages, But when he reached for Alara's hand, the wound was already closing, healing impossibly fast, leaving only a thin silver scar. The oath took, Victor said, satisfaction in his voice. And powerfully. I've never seen the seal react that strongly. Serafini stepped forward, bowing slightly to Alara. Welcome to House Nightshade, sister. You're one of us now. The words should have felt foreign, wrong. But they didn't. Alara looked at Caspian and saw the wonder in his expression mirrored what she felt. The connection between them hummed with potential, terrifying and perfect. How long before Thorn finds out? Alara asked. They already know, Victor said grimly, checking his phone. The oath's completion sent ripples through the magical network. Every house felt it. And Draven has sent formal challenge. He's demanding council arbitration. Let him demand, Caspian said, his voice hard. The oath is legal, consensual, and witnessed by 3 houses. Thorn has no standing. They'll argue you coerced her. That the timeline proves manipulation. Then we prove otherwise. Caspian looked at Alara. How do you feel? Truthfully? Alara took inventory. Her hand no longer hurt. The strange awareness of Caspian felt less alien now, settling into something almost comfortable. And underneath everything, a sense of rightness she couldn't explain. I feel like I made the right choice, she said. And like I'm about to face the consequences of that choice very soon. Tomorrow night, Victor confirmed. Emergency council session. Thorn is calling for invalidation of the oath and your immediate surrender to their custody. The fear that had been hovering crashed down. Can they do that? They can try. Caspian's hand found hers again, and through the oath bond, she felt his determination. But I've been preparing for this fight for 70 years. And now I have something they don't expect. What's that? A human willing to stand before them and declare her choice. He smiled slightly. You've already proven you don't cower. Tomorrow, you prove you don't break. The witnesses departed, leaving Alara and Caspian alone. The connection between them felt more pronounced in the silence, not intrusive, but present. She could sense his emotions if she focused, concern, protectiveness, and something warmer she didn't want to name yet. Does it bother you? Caspian asked. Feeling me there? It's strange, but not bad. Alara sat on the couch, suddenly exhausted. Can you feel what I'm feeling? If I pay attention, yes. Right now you're tired, scared, and trying very hard to be brave. He sat beside her, careful not to crowd. I can also feel that you're having second thoughts. Not about the oath, but about tomorrow. Is that normal? Completely. You're about to face vampires who want you dead, armed only with words and the protection of a house they already hate. His expression turned serious. I won't lie to you, Alara. Tomorrow will be dangerous. But you won't face it alone. I'll be there. Victor will be there. Every vampire who believes in the Accords will be there. What if it's not enough? Then we fight differently. But I don't believe it will come to that. He touched her face gently. You've already changed the game just by existing. By choosing partnership over surrender. Thorn expected you to run or collapse. Instead, you bound yourself to their greatest enemy. That terrifies them. Through the bond, Alara felt the truth of his words. And beneath that, his absolute commitment to protecting her. Get some rest, Caspian said softly. Tomorrow we show the council what humans are truly capable of. Alara wanted to sleep, but her mind raced. She lay in the borrowed bed, feeling Caspian's presence like a second heartbeat, and wondered what tomorrow would bring. Across the bunker, Caspian sat alone in the dark. The oath bond showing him Alara's fear and determination in equal measure. He'd sworn to protect her without possessing her. Now he had to prove he meant it. His phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. You've signed her death warrant. Blood right supersedes all oaths. She's ours. Nightshade. You just delayed the inevitable. Caspian deleted it without responding. Let Thorn believe they'd won. Tomorrow, he'd show them how wrong they were. But as he sat in the darkness, feeling Alara's gradual descent into sleep through their bond, one thought haunted him. What if he couldn't protect her? What if binding her to him had only made her a bigger target? He pushed the doubt away. No room for fear now. Only strategy, preparation, and the oath he'd made to a woman who'd saved his life with a crystal vase. Tomorrow, the council would decide if that oath meant anything. Tomorrow, everything would change. Chapter 10. The verdict council chambers felt different this time, charged with anticipation, crowded beyond capacity. Every house had sent representatives, filling the tiered seats until vampires stood along the walls. Alara felt the weight of their attention like physical pressure. She wore armor disguised as elegance, a deep blue dress that Serafini had provided, structured and formal. The silver scar on her palm caught the light, visible proof of the oath. She'd stopped trying to hide it. Caspian stood beside her, his presence both reassuring and intensifying the scrutiny. Through their bond, she felt his controlled fury, the careful mask he wore over deeper emotions. Magistrate Winters called the session to order, her ice blue eyes sweeping the chamber. We convene to address House Thorne's challenge to the blood oath between Caspian Nightshade and Alara Thorne. Counselor Draven, present your case. Draven rose, and his smile was venomous triumph. The oath is invalid. Genetic testing proves Miss Thorne shares blood with House Thorne's founding line. Blood right supersedes all subsequent bonds. She belongs to us by ancient law, and Nightshade's oath is theft. Murmurs rippled through the chamber. Alara felt Caspian's anger spike through the bond, but his face remained impassive. Furthermore, Draven continued, the timeline proves coercion. From first contact to oath completion was merely 5 days. Insufficient time for informed consent. Nightshade manipulated a vulnerable human into binding herself to escape persecution that he himself provoked by harboring her. That's a lie, Alara said, her voice cutting through the chamber before she could stop herself. Silence fell. Every vampire turned to stare. Magistrate Winters raised an eyebrow. Miss Thorne, you are not recognized to speak. Then recognize me. Alara stepped forward, shaking off Caspian's restraining hand. You're discussing my life, my choices, my blood. I should have a voice in this. Winters studied her for a long moment. Then, surprisingly, she nodded. Very well, speak. Alara's heart hammered, but the anger burning through her was stronger than fear. Counselor Draven claims I was coerced. That 5 days wasn't enough time to understand what I was choosing. But I understood perfectly. She turned to face the assembled vampires. I understood that House Thorne attacked me, tried to kill me, claimed ownership of me based on DNA I didn't even know I had. And I understood that Caspian Nightshade offered me a choice when everyone else wanted to decide my fate for me. Pretty words, Draven sneered. But the law is clear. The law, Alara interrupted, says blood oaths require free consent from both parties. I gave mine. Witnesses from 3 houses observed it. Unless you're claiming I'm incapable of consent, your argument falls apart. Shocked. Silence. No human had ever spoken to a council member that way. Draven's face darkened with rage. You don't understand what you've done. That oath makes you Nightshade property. No, Caspian's voice was quiet but absolute. The oath makes her our equal. Read the binding words again, counselor. I specifically excluded ownership clauses. Victor stood, holding a document. I have the complete transcript of the oath ceremony. Permission to enter it as evidence? Winters nodded. Victor approached the council platform, distributing copies to each elder. Alara watched them read, saw surprise cross several faces. This is unusual. One elder murmured. Conditional clauses. Mutual dissolution rights. This isn't a traditional blood oath at all, because I'm not a traditional vampire, Caspian said. I don't believe in owning people, even through magic. Draven slammed his hand down. Irrelevant. Blood right predates oath law by centuries. Our claim supersedes his, regardless of conditions. Actually, Serafini spoke up from the gallery. Blood right only applies to unclaimed humans. Once a blood oath is sealed, the human becomes house property, or in this unprecedented case, house equal. At which point genetic connection becomes legally irrelevant. That's a technicality. Draven snarled. That's the law, Serafini countered smoothly. Unless the council wishes to invalidate 700 years of precedent. The chamber erupted in argument. Vampires shouted over each other, ancient alliances and rivalries surfacing in the chaos. Magistrate Winters called for order, her voice cutting through the noise like a blade. Enough. She stood, and silence fell immediately. This council will deliberate in private. All parties will withdraw to the antechambers. We will render judgment within the hour. The chamber emptied in tense silence. Caspian guided Alara to a waiting room, where Victor and Serafini joined them. That was either brilliant or suicidal, Victor said, though his tone held approval. Speaking out like that. I'm tired of being spoken about like I'm not here, Alara said. Her hands were shaking now, adrenaline crashing. They were debating ownership like I'm furniture. Caspian pulled her into his arms without asking permission. Through the bond, she felt his pride, his fear, his fierce protectiveness. "You were magnificent," he murmured against her hair. "Terrifying and magnificent. What happens if they rule against us? Then we fight. Legally first, physically, if necessary." His arms tightened. "But I don't think they will. Serafini's right, the law supports us. And you just demonstrated exactly why blood right is obsolete. You're not cattle waiting to be claimed. You're a person capable of making informed choices." The hour dragged like days. Alara paced. Caspian maintained his calm exterior, but through the bond she felt his tension. Victor made calls, gathering allies in case the ruling went badly. Serafini arrived with coffee Alara couldn't drink and information she could barely process. Finally, a council attendant appeared. "They're ready." The chamber was eerily quiet when they returned. Every vampire sat in absolute stillness, their expressions unreadable. Magistrate Winters stood at the center of the council platform, holding a formal decree. "This council has reviewed all evidence, testimony, and legal precedent," she began. "The question before us is whether blood right supersedes consensual blood oath. The answer is complex." Alara's stomach dropped. "Blood right," Winters continued, "exists to prevent vampires from stealing humans with valuable bloodlines. However, it was written in an era when humans had no legal standing, no voice, no agency. Times have changed. The Accords recognize human autonomy, which creates a paradox. How can we honor both blood right and human choice?" She paused, letting the question hang. After extensive deliberation, "This council rules as follows. Blood right applies only when the human in question is unaware of their heritage and unable to make informed choice. Once informed as Miss Thorne, now as the human may choose which house claim to honor. If they choose to reject blood right through alternate binding, that choice must be respected." Relief flooded through Alara so powerfully she swayed. Caspian steadied her, his hand firm on her back. "Therefore," Winters announced, "the blood oath between Caspian Nightshade and Alara Thorne is ruled valid and legally binding. House Thorne's claim is denied." The chamber exploded. Half the vampires cheered. The other half shouted protests. Draven was on his feet, his face twisted with rage. "This is an outrage. You're rewriting centuries of law to favor Nightshade. We're adapting centuries of law to modern reality." Winters cut him off. "Unless you'd like to argue that humans should have no rights whatsoever? Because that would violate the Accords you claim to support." Draven's jaw worked. He looked at Alara with pure hatred. "This isn't over. House Thorne does not accept. House Thorne will accept, or face expulsion from this council." Winters' voice was ice. The vote was 6-4. "Counselor, you've lost." Again, Draven stormed from the chamber, 3 other vampires following. The remaining houses erupted in conversation, some congratulatory, others clearly troubled by the precedent. Victor clapped Caspian on the shoulder. "We won, actually won, for now," Caspian said quietly. But through the bond, Alara felt his relief, his cautious hope. Magistrate Winters approached them, her expression unreadable. "Miss Thorne." A word. Alara stepped forward, trying not to show fear. Up close, Winters was even more intimidating, ancient power wrapped in modern elegance. "You've set a dangerous precedent," Winters said softly. "Given other humans legal standing to refuse blood right. Do you understand what that means? That humans aren't property?" Winters smiled slightly. "Precisely. For centuries, we've treated your kind as resources to be managed. You've forced us to acknowledge you as equals capable of informed choice. Some vampires will never accept that. They'll fight it, violently if necessary. Then they'll have to fight me too," Alara said steadily. "Indeed." Winters studied her with those ice blue eyes. "I voted in your favor, Miss Thorne, not because I particularly like Nightshade or his idealism, but because change is inevitable. The Accords are failing. We need new models, new alliances. You and Caspian might be that model, or you might be the spark that burns everything down." She turned to leave, then paused. "Either way, you've made yourself essential. Don't waste it." She walked away, leaving Alara stunned. The chamber slowly emptied. Allies approached to offer congratulations. Houses Corvus, Blackwell, others Alara didn't know. Each one acknowledged her directly, treated her as Caspian's equal rather than his possession. Finally, only Caspian, Victor, and Alara remained. "What now?" Alara asked. "Now," Caspian said, "we go home. The real home. Not bunkers and safe houses. We proved that this partnership works, that humans and vampires can coexist as equals. Thorn won't let it rest. No, but we've won the legal battle. The political battle continues. He took her hand, his thumb brushing over the silver scar. Are you ready for that? This isn't over. It might never be over. Through the bond, Alara felt his question beneath the question. Are you ready for forever with me? For this strange, dangerous, unprecedented partnership. She thought about the woman she'd been a week ago, broken, desperate, invisible. Then she thought about who she'd become, someone who testified to councils, bound herself to ancient houses, demanded to be seen as equal. I'm ready, she said. And meant it. Caspian smiled, genuine, warm, full of possibilities. Then let's begin. They left the council chambers hand in hand, walking into a future neither could predict, but both chose willingly. Outside, dawn threatened the horizon. Caspian would need shelter soon. But for now, they stood in the gray pre-light, vampire and human, bound by blood and choice, facing whatever came next. Together, the war with House Thorn wasn't over. The challenges ahead would be immense. But Alara had learned something crucial. She was stronger than she'd ever imagined. And with Caspian beside her equal partner, chosen family, unexpected miracle, she could face anything, even eternity.